Hi, my name is Mira, and I wouldn't say I have a vested interest in fangames. Although Danganronpa was not my first visual novel, it was one that gripped me during the height of the COVID era. Nowadays, I have a very cynical view of its storytelling, but the core premise will always be something I could never hate. When I realized I had no more works to read, I turned to fangames. So naturally, I suffered a slow death, as many were unfinished. Well, that's not true. I've watched Danganronpa F in between lunch breaks. I've played through laps, and the thoughts I have for that are for a different time. Danganronpa Dead End is in hell, and Eden's Garden is out with its own playable chapter. So when I heard that Kill Cure had finally released its prologue after issues of Burnout from former directors a couple of years later, I was pretty stoked to play it. Needless to say, I had some pretty strong opinions about what I just read. I'm making this video partly as a place to gather my thoughts about this piece of work, and to shed some light on what others can learn about its shortcomings and missed opportunities, and how the story is constructed thus far. Just to be sure I'm not misconstrued, this video isn't made with malicious intent towards the staff of Kill Cure, and is only made with constructive criticism in mind. Since we are covering the entirety of the prologue, this is your final chance to tab out if you don't want to be spoiled. Unless you want to, which, hey, it's your life. We start off with a scene of Bizarro Saru, Bizarro for short, cursing us with whatever they're mad about, as a result of a certain man. After that, they begin retelling the story of the prologue to us, putting us in the shoes of one Hiroki Uzuki, the ultimate apprentice, or Hiro for short. Seeing a headline about Bitsu Fukawa, the headmaster, being arrested, he angrily clutches his fist at the sidewalk about his sentencing. After another short monologue from an unknown figure, we continue in Hiro's perspective, waking up in an escape room of Bizarro's making. After pressing the tape recorder, we come to learn of our obvious predicament, with the helping of a poorly done reference to Higurashi. Okay, we have to talk about this for a brief moment. The reason why this is such a poorly executed reference is mainly because of the romanization of the term demon away. It's commonly used in Higurashi, and it makes it much more awkward to read if it's romanized. A real Keikaku means plan moment. Moving on, we hear the voices from the other rooms, and we are essentially forced to solve the puzzle. Once we press the tablet, everything goes white, and we are met with a hologram of an object related to a season. Now, this introduction to the Arya technology is fine. The problem here isn't the tablet, it's the puzzle. Now, let's think for a second. This is a puzzle that has differing holograms for each student, and it corresponds to a season. It also requires you to slot in 4 different tiles in an unknown order that corresponds to a season. So there are a few ways to approach this. Is it the order of the people in the rooms? The order of the names of the people in the escape room? Are there duplicates of season indicators and you have to potentially flip certain tiles in a certain order? Hell, even the order you begin hearing them, setting aside the logistics of that. There are certainly a lot more you can think of than the ones I'm listing off here, but I'm just naming a few. Have you locked in your answer? Good. It's none of that. It has nothing to do with any of the above. The actual answer is just the 4 seasons in order. Now, we later find out that this is an exercise by Kokoro Saru, Koko for short, to help foster friendships with the respective groups. But you can straight up break this puzzle's intentions, not only in the context of the story, as a group exercise, and icebreaker as it doesn't require external help or clues, but also meta-narratively, with regards to Arya technology, as you don't even have to turn them on to solve it, as I'm sure this initial booting up of the tablets will matter later on in future chapters. And just so we're clear on this, acknowledging that this puzzle was trivial or easy does not make it better or resolve the flaws in it whatsoever. Where there could have been an interesting scenario that both introduced danger and our first batch of characters at the same time, there is just the plain reality of only the former, and we end up taking more time doing those introductions. But so be it. We exit our rooms to meet our other group in the flesh and hurriedly solve another puzzle before we are scorched by a furnace, and we finally get the introductions. Just kidding. We have to look at a description below a monkey statue that won't be relevant until future chapters. Okay, now we can get introduced to our first batch of characters. We are first introduced to Maru Yokokume, a peppy and slightly overbearing activist. Whether or not this latter trait is intentional, I am unclear, but props to the writers if it is. Next up is Momoe Soga, a LARPer that basically does Yakuza side quests as a profession. And finally, Bushido Saji, a yoga instructor that has a sort of zen-like personality. If it sounds like I'm skimming their background, I sort of am, but that's also mainly because they almost feel like caricatures in some capacity. Now, I don't mean this in an offensive context, but rather a superficial one, where there isn't really much to who they are outside of their profession. That's not to say that you can't have these characters, but the abundance of them very much makes your work shallow. Moving on, what are we doing here? Well, at least she's accurate to some progressives I know. Oh god, even you, Hiro? Okay. Well, I suppose we have to rip this band-aid off at some point. Let's go over the ideal politician guy for a second and address this. This girl is Fan Fan Long, a human guinea pig that can withstand whatever drug she's being tested with. We won't really talk about the logistics of that, but rather how Kyokyo treats her premise. You may think that this is a character that proudly takes on her deformities on the chin, despite all the jeering. And while that is the case in some aspects, as you saw from how Maru and Hiro act towards her, you can't help but get this feeling that these jokes at her expense regardless. One of the future characters called her a smurf for crying out loud. And this applies to the Broadway girl that we'll see later on, but to a lesser degree, with the instrument she puts in her ear. Now, am I saying that the writers are ableist or have malicious intent? No. This is just another failed opportunity where there could have been a much deeper written character, and that's not to say that they can't do that in future chapters of their backstory. But look me in the eyes. Seriously, look me in the eyes and tell me with a straight face they did seriously. Seriously! Take that deep plot seriously with this portrayal. Anyways. Right. The ideal politician guy. Yatostone Crown is the ultimate mayor, and he is more devoid of personality than an empty canvas. We then move on to the initial puzzle rooms of their respective group, and stumble onto Shoko Otaki hiding in a shrine cabinet. We learn that he is a professional form actor. A brief tangent, but am I the only one who was disappointed by the talents in this work? With the theme of vices and virtues, you'd think that the professions of this cast would reflect that. But it was already sort of not since the reveal of Hiro's talent as an ultimate apprentice. With Shoko here though, even if his talent doesn't reflect that theme, he very much has what I would like to call not a real job. Genuinely. Who the fuck would accept someone like that into an academy? Setting that aside, Shoko has a sort of gremlin archetype, and I wouldn't say it's anything meaningful to write about. We head out to reconvene with Momoe and Busho to exchange information gathered, and we move on to the next batch of characters, while also looking out for a girl that Yato and Fanfan mentioned, only known as Girl A so far. We get a pretty funny option on the lack of choice since we're interrupted by the Broadway girl we talked about before, who we now know is called Toya Imamura. It's a shame she's really annoying though. Maybe it's just me. Maybe there's someone out there who likes her. I would have to ask them why though. Anyways, we go on to meet Iki Namiki, an angler that talks about their work fantastically, and Manzo Shibue, the ultimate stuntman. Not much to write home about them either, so we'll move on to Naomi Danjuma, professional architect, and the next point on. There's an interesting moment where we suddenly stumble onto the topic of nepotism within potential adults. And you'd think since there was a visceral reaction from Hiro, we get a bit more background on him or the school system. But just as it quickly gets brought up, it awkwardly resolves itself. And I find that to be a shame. There really could have been a good moment. I also find it slightly funny that Maru brings up his puzzle solving like they didn't already solve it by the time he woke up. But that's this batch done. We move out to meet our final batch, with the helping of a slightly cringeworthy reference, and another art flash. We then get introduced to Kunitaro Higa, Taro for short, a chill pawnbroker, and Onichi Itakaku, an eccentric tailor. There's not much to say about them either, but I would like to make an observation. Although some of these characters are Japanese, their personalities sometimes take inspiration from certain Western circles, like Taro's mannerisms and Maru's overcorrectness at certain points, which makes them feel slightly awkward for me. But This is just my opinion, and I'm sure I'm unique in this feeling, but feel free to give me your thoughts about this, as I'm curious as to what other people think about this particular nitpick of mine. Moving on, we are introduced to Chikuma Konishi, a frugal student which I stress again, is not a real job. We then go on to meet Usa Kawagichi, who has a real job as an epidemiologist. She's a bit of a zealot. After meeting the final batch, we go and bang at a door that has been locked for an extended time, and we get a moment of tension as someone's eyes on us on the other side, but it turns out to be nothing. We meet the instructor for our class, Shiori Nakagawa. Seeing as she's in the same boat as us, confusion begins to well up within our cast, and Shiori borrows the megaphone of Maru to tell the class that she's in the same situation as the rest of us, and that we are beneath the academy we were headed towards. Frankly, I'm not sure why she got a megaphone when everyone was already paying attention to her, but I digress. After building trust with our current cast, Gurley struts in and shatters it all with Theory arguing that she is a malicious actor, citing her sudden appearance of being alone, contradictory to what the official process should be for staff. While this is a fun moment that effectively trickles down information about the school, I hate to rain on this parade, but I find it odd that Hiro is the only one who actually scrutinized, and the others kind of gobble her story up. Like, it really all takes one question just to shake this theory. For what? I suppose this is a nitpick, but it's just a theory without love. Anyways, once the tide shifts against her theory, she clams up, and the teacher tells us that she's Hide Osaka, the ultimate theorist. We all have a good moment where we forget our predicament, and then we are told to come up to the assembly room. And once everyone gathers, we are introduced to this thing. This is Coco, the monkey we previously mentioned regarding the escape rooms. Now, let's set aside that this is a counselor and how that process would even work when nobody would take it seriously. Just let that slide. After a bit of braiding and abuse, Coco freezes up, and we meet the other monkey seen in the opening, our vice counselor in the middle. We go through our standard story beats, and we're introduced to the kill-cure system, a process where if you vote the killer out, the accomplice will survive, and vice versa. On top of that, we're introduced to the Seisura system, where if nothing happens, it turns into a battle royale. It's an interesting idea, but it's not one that we'll be familiar with until later installments, so we won't touch on that now. Shoko gets angry and attempts to fight back, but he's quickly ensnared by Bizarro's tale. Now, you could say that this is a fine introduction of authority for the cast, but for the audience who's reading this, and already knows how this goes from previous installments or other fangans, I mean, you're probably playing Kill-Cure because you've been introduced to fangans. So, you know what's gonna happen. We all know what's gonna happen.
The fuck out of here.
Put them bitches up.
You wouldn't shoot me, pussy. You're soft as baby shit.
Put them bitches up.
You're soft as baby
Put them
shit.
bitches up.
You're not gonna blow your gun.
Nothing's going to happen. Now, you could respond, you don't know that, and I would say, it's not guaranteed that it won't. Yeah, but like, from the way that we've been reading this, there's not much deviation in the story beats of other Danganronpas or fangans, so I would be more surprised if they did. Anyways, we get hit with the sleeping gas in the assembly room, and we run out to our dorms, unable to go back. Coco comes back to us and lets us know about anti-motives. Sure, why not? We move to our room to reminisce, and are interrupted by Hide, and we go through the same process that we did during the initial confrontation, just with slightly different information learned. The end. The prologue of this game is serviceable. It's fine, but it's by the numbers, and in my opinion, not really worth your time as a prologue. This may come off as harsh, and it kind of is, but think about it. What are you actually looking forward to, excited about for Chapter 1? The ties between our protagonist and the convicted former headmaster? That link is pretty weak, considering we don't have much of an inkling about his personality or what he did for Hiro. The kill-cure or Seisura system? In my opinion, I don't think that's anything more than a, yeah, I think that's cool, passing thought. The characters? I mean... The real sin of this prologue is not that it's devoid of anything to look forward to, it's that they could have had something for you to look forward to. But the lack of creativity in storytelling That decision to stay with the rigid story beats and characterization that many people are already familiar with if they came across this project makes it a real tragedy. If you would ever recommend this project to someone, it would be when Chapter 1 is out. And I don't think that's good. But that's all I have to say about Kill Cure. I hope you learned something by watching this, and I'll see you next time, whether it be for another fangan or visual novel. Now, where was I? Oh, right. Chaos Head. Dude! Dude! That's your sister! Stop!